Today, I'm joined by Operator Starsky, again on Silicon Curtain. He really needs no introduction. Many of you will be familiar with his face, his voice, his output of fantastic content. And I should point out, this isn't the first time. We've had lots of incredible conversations on the channel, all in support of Ukraine. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. And we gotta meet offline more often, I think, because it's so cool.
The event in Berlin was super cool. Meeting you in real life was absolutely brilliant. It's a little bit like after COVID, when you've spoken to people on the phone and you suddenly meet them, but it didn't seem kind of weird. No, I hope you didn't find it weird.
It was nice. It was nice to see you and other guys, Serhiy, Sumlani, and Sasha, and all the guests. It was absolutely amazing. I think we need much more such events, such panels, because and they need more publicity, in my opinion, because there were so many important people, representatives of German government, different international experts, and of course General Ben Hodges, even though he didn't make it to the panel himself, but he was in record. But nonetheless, I think it's very, very important to bring much more publicity to such events, and I'm looking forward to see more of that.
We'll definitely do that, because we had the event in Lviv last year. There's this event in Berlin. I went to Paris in December. I think it's important to increase the pace of these events. And as you say, the impact as well. It's very difficult to get media coverage, as you say, despite the important speakers delivering incredibly important messages. It's not that easy to cut through in the media, but we do know that the pro-Ukraine bubble is big, and we know they're super engaged with this kind of stuff. So heads up, I think, everyone, that we're going to try and organize something again in Berlin, but also Brussels. I've potentially got a facility in Brussels where we could do something similar. But let's jump into the conversation, because there's so much going on. It's kind of ridiculous. We're not going to be able to cover even a fraction of what's going on. The two key things I want to focus on really is the Kharkiv offensive, and then we've got to touch upon the extraordinary purges that are happening in the land of darkness and trauma. But let's start with Kharkiv. What's going on there? Because there's been a lot of criticism. There's been a lot of armchair generals saying, oh, well, the fortifications didn't work, or this was wrong, that was wrong. It seems, however, the Russians have been held in check, and things are a little more complex on the ground than we necessarily know from the media.
People must understand that Russians concentrated insane number of personnel in the direction of Kharkiv, and it's not that fortifications didn't work. Fortifications worked, and Russians did not achieve the necessary operational goals that they pursued. And the very fact that our guys are still there and keep fighting against Russian invaders, it means that there are fortifications that are being used at this moment. But again, we lost a lot of time. We lost almost 6 months without the Western supplies and absolutely necessary military aid from our American allies for different reasons, as we know. And unfortunately, this time was absolutely wasted. Currently, we see that Ukrainian defenders are using ATACMS very, very efficiently. Yesterday, Crimea was hit, multiple military facilities there, including, I believe, satellite space communication center used by Russians for quite a while. And also Donetsk, we saw a lot of Russian anti-air systems destroyed yesterday, but it's a drop of water in the sea, because guys, we lost a lot of time. Russians didn't lose this time, because they are very committed to the idea of eliminating Ukrainian identity and Ukrainian nation, and basically Western countries that are bordering the Mordor. That's why they were preparing so much. our commitment is much bigger because Russians don't have such motivation to kill us, which would be as big as our motivation to live, right? But at the same time, unfortunately, we didn't have necessary military supplies, and that's probably the only reason why we see what is happening right now. The very fact that Russians spent exactly 2 weeks and only gained approximately 5 miles of territory in Kharkiv region, regardless of all the forces, regardless of all their artillery and aviation that is currently used in the area, it basically confirms the fact that our defenders do amazing job in that area. A lot of my friends are there currently, 13th Brigade Khartia. A lot of my former service mates. Do you call them service mates?
Comrades, I guess. That you might not want to use that word for various reasons. Yes.
Brothers and sisters, service
Yes.
mates. Let's invent a word here. They are fighting there, and from their recent reports that I've heard, they say that Russians did not achieve the success that they expected to achieve during the first days of this offensive. During the first days, they expected to make 10-20 miles deeper into the territory towards Stary Saltov, towards Kharkiv. Kharkiv would work more like, to distract their attention. And as for Stary Saltov, it's very, very obvious that they're trying to make like a buffer zone there. So I completely agree with the analysis of the Institute for Studying of War. Instead of taking control over the whole Kharkiv Oblast, which is impossible, they concentrated on creating buffer zones, which in this case and in this precise location looks more or less effective and successful for the Russian terrorists.
And is this to prevent Ponomarev and the Russian Free Legions from penetrating the border? Is this the primary objective, or are there also propagandistic wins from this offensive?
I think it was one of the objectives because Russian freedom fighters bring a lot of trouble to the Russian invaders on their own territory, because this is their own territory. So I believe that it was made preemptively, in order preventively, in order not to let them operate much on the territory of Russia. But I believe that they will be used in different directions. Again, we have a whole Belarusian regiment, Polk Kostusia Kalinovskого, and those guys are also very, very professional and well-trained and motivated. So we still have plenty of forces that can and will be used.
And there's a couple of things to follow up from there. We'll talk about glide bombs in a minute, because the delay in armaments has not just had a catastrophic effect on Ukrainian forces, and to an extent, it's clearly affected morale, perhaps more so in the civilian population. It's also given Russia the space to develop new techniques, and glide bombs is one of the particularly toxic, nasty, unpleasant innovations that have come out of Mordor in the last few months.
This is true. Those gliding bombs can be dropped at a range of approximately 70-75 kilometers from the target, which basically gives Russians opportunity to strike Kharkiv. They were used and are still used in Donetsk direction often, okay, but they started using those gliding bombs against Kharkiv because currently Russian troops are located approximately 30 kilometers from the city. And anti-air systems are not really the solution to this problem. The better solution is, and I think probably only solution, is jet fighters. Okay, so we're talking about F-16s. We know that Ukrainian pilots, first group of them already finished training, so we expect to see them anytime soon. They were announced probably already a month ago or something like that by the officials, by the spokesman of the Air Forces of Ukraine. And we expect to see them very, very, very soon. So hopefully they will, if not eliminate, but at least reduce this current problem, because those bombs are nasty, and unfortunately Russians can produce quite a lot of them on a monthly basis. It's not like hypersonic missiles or those caliber missiles made out of snatched washing machines, right? They are they can be produced in much bigger amounts, which is a big problem. And again, this is another reason why Ukraine must be allowed to strike military targets on the Russian territory, because Russians produce them in factories, and those factories are basically very, very good targets for potentially long-range missiles that can be provided to Ukraine.
That was going to be my next question, because there is a debate starting to happen. We hope it's going to gain more traction. And this is within the US administration, where it's felt that Jake Sullivan, and to an extent Biden probably, are extremely cautious, or extremely, dare I say, intimidated by Russia's threats. And it is thought the source of this injuncture to not strike Russian territory comes from them. But there are other more hawkish members of the Biden team. Now, I know you don't get into politics, and I know you don't like criticizing allies, but the UK Defence Secretary has come out and basically said, word for word, that the way that we're demanding Ukraine fights this war makes no sense whatsoever. He really didn't pull his punches there. And I'm pretty sure you'd agree with that. How do we get this debate moving? How do we put pressure on the US administration? And I'm thinking here in particular that around 30 to 35% of the audience watching this video are based in the US. So it's a kind of question as well as to what can you guys do to put pressure on your representatives and senators? I'd love to hear what you think.
I think people, like common people, society, were asking to deliver long-range weapons to Ukraine and let Ukraine strike Russian military targets on the Russian territory already for more than 2 years. And it's not about the society, because again, there were government in Germany, the Bundestag, voted to deliver like Taurus missiles, shots, disagreed with that. There are many other examples, but the problem is, I believe that society cannot really change it, maybe not directly, but directly, I think it's not really possible. What matters here is the intelligence, because the reason why Ukraine is given the military supplies and long-range weapons at this very stage is because all kinds of intelligence agencies currently report to the officials, to people on the level of presidents of countries, and they deliver some very, very important information that basically confirms that Russians are preparing to take control over Ukraine, invade other Western countries, invade bordering countries of Baltics, and of course Poland. By the way, why Poland? Because we know that Putin imagines himself as Собиратель земель русских, which is like
yes.
a collector of the Russian lands, which
Gather
means that,
together the Russian world, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, so he wants to stitch all the countries that belonged to the Warsaw Pact, that belonged to the Soviet space, back to Russia. And of course, we know that half Germany was there as well, right? I recently returned from Berlin. I visited the Stasi Museum, which was something so incredible. I think I will talk about it in some of my streams because it's sobering. It's so much sobering experience, my friend. So Putin imagines himself as reunificator, I don't know, of former Russian lands, right, that belonged to the Soviet bloc, and of course, Poland, part of Germany, Baltic states, Bulgaria, yeah, they all belong there in his sick mind. Intelligence delivers this information directly to decision makers, the presidents, governments, and this plays big role. The very fact that Americans are currently discussing this proves that there was something that changed their mind, and it was basically the information delivered by their own intelligence agencies. So I think this is the crucial game changer here.
So it seems, however, that despite that information, and that information potentially changed the mind of Speaker Johnson, and he's now saying that putting restrictions on using especially US weaponry on the territory of Russia is not what the Republicans signed up for. It's not what was, signed up for when the aid bill was passed. And it does seem that certain European countries have really woken up. The Baltics, the Nordics definitely have woken up to the threat. Finland's always been aware of the threat. Britain doesn't seem to have, red lines. When is the rest of the world, or the Western world, going to think that, stopping the Velikoruskaya Pizdokratia from reforming is what needs to happen?
They must, first of all, think about their own security, right? If every Western country thinks about its own security, and they will easily realize that the threat is there as well on their own territory. So if they don't protect Ukraine and themselves from the Russian terrorism, this will bring catastrophic consequence, because Russia has two ways of acting, right? Is via direct military measures, right? Via war, via invasion, and via informational warfare on the territory of the targeted countries. So those are two biggest threats that Western world is facing right now. Russia is present, Russian influencers are present in every given country of free world, right, of Western countries. They easily operate in 120 countries around the world using Россотрудничество and all their massive grid of spies that recruit influencers. And this is what people should realize. If they care about their security, they must care to eliminate Russian influence in their country and eliminate Russian military influence in Ukraine. So this is something very, very important everybody should think about nowadays.
And this is obviously what you're working on, is countering Russian propaganda, and by extension, the sort of networks of influence, spying. We're seeing sabotage taking off. I wouldn't be surprised if assassinations didn't have an uptick, especially amongst the diaspora, the Russian diaspora, that'll start trying to kill, I would imagine, opposition figures, and then who knows? They'll move on to Western figures as well. And they've got a big long list now, haven't they, of foreign agents and so on.
And
Which
and this is this is something very important again, because recently Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, stated that they already captured a bunch of Russian spies that were not ordered to collect information. They were ordered to literally kill people. So they were preparing acts of sabotage. They were preparing terrorist acts on the territory of Poland and Baltic countries. And we can see that this basically they're using spies from GRU-GSH, the main department of intelligence of Terrorist Federation, which is basically a military branch. And they pose great danger currently to not just to public figures, but for ordinary citizens of Europe. Recently, there was this huge, massive fire in Berlin at the factory that was connected to producing parts for Iris-T, I believe. And we will see this unfolding very, very soon, unfortunately, because Putin will use all kinds of his influence, all kinds of spies, all kinds of misinformation. One very, very important threat that we will see very, very soon is Russians are teaching and basically training so-called young bloggers that will promote Russian narratives on the West, that will try to improve Russian image on the West. And this process started not only on the territory of Russia, it also started on the territory of the occupied Ukrainian territories in Donetsk, in Luhansk. There's a bunch of so-called young bloggers that are currently prepared by the Russian PsyOps specialists, and we will see them on YouTube and other social media again very, very soon. The so-called real reporter, my favorite guy from Moscow, is the dude who worked for
independent
Russia.
thinkers, isn't it?
Yeah, independent thinker from Russia Today. So people like him, unfortunately, we will see them very, very soon. So we have to be prepared for this as well, because Putin realized that at some point, not like he's losing the informational warfare, but thinking people which are not really his audience, right? Thinking people, they have more trust to pro-Ukrainian sources, right? To Western sources of information. They really mistrust Russia. But apparently they will be his next target audience. We know that Russian propagandists often target people that lean towards conspiracy theories, flat earth, aliens, and things like that. But soon we will see those bloggers in the social media as well, and we have to somehow react to this. So this is another thing that I'm thinking a lot about these days.
It's interesting you should say that, because from another guest on the channel, I won't say who, because I think this is sort of, don't want to compromise the source, but he was saying, watch out for a significant increase in investment in RT, Russia Today, not in Europe, but in Global South. So apparently huge investment in Spanish language service and English language service for the Americas and around the world. So that would suggest, and we've been saying it all along here on the channel, Putin escalates. And if he's not making success on the battlefield, he will escalate both gray zone warfare, hybrid warfare, informational warfare. They will all be seeing things which, unfortunately, we should be expecting, but they always catch us by surprise.
Yeah, I really, really hope that the countries, the governments prepared for this. But from what I see, Fortunately, it's not so. So we have to be prepared ourselves. I'm talking about the active community that can do things, that can do projects, have its own initiative. The active part of our society should be prepared for this.
Be more Ukrainian, in fact. Don't rely on the government to solve the problem. Get out and solve the problem. Well, in the second part of the interview, because this is going to be a relatively short one today, because as I explained earlier, I'm going to go and see Prytula, which is this is going to be interesting. They've done a documentary which blends music, but also, of course, the struggle that's going on and the role that art and musicians play in Ukraine's resilience. So that's going to be an important thing. Let's turn to Mordor. We can't avoid that subject any longer. Extraordinary things are happening. And as you say, information warfare, hybrid warfare, but it also seems like there's a bit of a move by the, I termed it the KGBishniki. There's the sort of that part of the intelligence services and the hierarchy that Putin represents. They seem to be making moves on the army to destroy any potential power base that could emerge to threaten Putin. I'd love to hear what your take on events is, though.
Yeah, so we heard information that there was a case when Russian generals started criticizing Putin because of all the Russian casualties that they're facing on a daily basis, just like Prigozhin did, right, last year. And that general got removed, so he was accused of corruption and things like that. And I believe that this is a natural process because you know, there are people who realize the whole scale of this insanity, all the losses and things like that, and they realize that this war brings no good to Russia. Russia is becoming more and more isolated internationally. Russia is losing a lot of funds, a lot of perspectives. Basically, I saw this amazing, my God, title in the newspaper from 2011. Yesterday, I was reading it about Dmitry Medvedev, who was like ersatz president of the Terrorist Federation before Putin changed the constitution. He wanted to make a visa-free regime with the European Union. And it's 2011. The title says Dmitry Medvedev wants to make visa-free regime with the European Union. 2024, Dmitry Medvedev wants to make visa-free regime with Zimbabwe. So like their vectors changed very much, as well as their expectations. And the people that can see this insanity, majority of them are already on the list of Wikipedia of, you know, mysteriously assassinated Russian oligarchs and influential people. So Putin is removing such people, and it's natural that he does that because they emerge. There's no way for them not to emerge in such consequences. And I believe his former driver, that also was his former bodyguard, and he was, my God, do you remember his last name?
No, I don't. I don't remember that.
Well, he's one of his closest people, Diomin, I believe.
That rings a bell.
Yeah. So he keeps him even closer to himself right now, and he keeps people like him, people whom he can trust, you know, as close as possible. All the generals that are not reliable will be removed, and they are removed. So we will see such cases in the future as well. It's not like something new happened, actually, because such things already happened over the course of this war several times. Again, Prigozhin, good health to the dead and things like that.
And Prigozhin, I mean, for all his monstrous brutality, um, he was quite effective when you compare him to some other people within the system. So there's been some media takes on what's going on in Russia, and they almost instantly get it wrong. They talk about corruption and the corruption charges being the real reason people are removed. Of course, it's not. In fact, some of the generals removed are renowned for stealing less than the career apparatchiks. The other reason is that, oh, they were removed for incompetence, and this is dangerous because more competent people will take their place. No, absolutely not. Nothing to do with incompetence. It's pure paranoia, isn't it? It's clearing the field of potential rivals. It's demanding absolute fealty, absolute loyalty in that kind of, Byzantine hierarchy, pecking order that Russia has.
I absolutely agree on that. Putin doesn't need soldiers who say, yes, we can go there, but we need like tanks and proper, ammunition. He needs people who just go and die, because apparently this madman already imagines himself something like a mix of Stalin and Hitler, uh, which is crazy. And he needs people who will just go and die for him. That's all. That's all Russia needs, and always needed. People who would just go and die without asking questions. That's what we see today. He's highly, highly paranoid right now because nothing goes according to the plan. Ukraine was supposed to be his own land for already 2 years. Imagine that. 2 years ago, Ukraine was supposed to be part of Russia already. And he cannot stand the fact that already 821 days he cannot do what he planned. We heard some rumors, though, according to Reuters, that Putin is already prepared to negotiate peace, considering the current front line. So he considers that current front line can become like next international border between Russia and Ukraine. I believe that it's plausible because he has absolutely no idea how to stop this war, but at the same time, he wants to end this war as a victor, right? As a person who came and conquered the land and attached them to the territory of Russia. So that's the current situation. We will see how it will happen. On one hand, of course, we would all like to just, stop where we are and take a rest and prepare and things like that. But we all understand that Putin will not stop there. He will not stop on those current frontline / border. It's impossible. He wants to continue to regroup his troops, regroup his resources, and continue westwards. He wants Baltic countries, he wants Poland, he wants part of Germany, he wants Bulgaria, and a big chunk of Moldova. That's his plan. And fortunately, Western intelligence found a way to bring this information to the decision makers.
And I think what people fail to understand, and I've mentioned it a lot on the channel, I've run this information or this idea past a number of experts who broadly think it's possible if we present a hard border, a hard barrier to Putin in Europe, which we should have done, 2 years ago, but finally we might get around to it. Again, that won't stop him. I mean, his ambition is in the West, but I think he'd be quite happy to turn south as well. And you have I call it the autocratic toolkit. And I think it's important for us to talk about this because you're developing an anti-propagandistic toolkit. I think what we need is a toolkit for democracy, a series of political technologies that we can use to expand democracy and freedom around the world, not necessarily imposing our type of democracy on everybody, but helping civic society to grow. In Georgia, very much it's suspected, again, at the behest of Putin, you've got the foreign agent law being foisted onto the Georgian people. You've got a new Maidan forming, and essentially you've also got a standoff there between Georgian Dream and the people. And there's no compromise there. It's either one or the other. And if Georgian Dream fails, then, Putin could very easily turn his gaze south. Now, he's very occupied in Ukraine at the moment, but Central Asia, Georgia, Armenia, these all could be rich territories for Putin's, ideas of expansion.
Azerbaijan, of course.
And Azerbaijan, I left out. Yeah, but yeah, of course.
Yeah, I agree on that. We can, again, I'm not only fighting propaganda, I'm fighting against totalitarian regimes, which is part of the fight. We see that China and Iran and North Korea to a lesser extent though, are mimicking Putin's hybrid warfare. They're mimicking his way of producing misinformation. And in Georgia, for example, basically it worked in a different manner, though, but still it worked because since 2008, all the Georgians realized what Russia brings, what Ruski Mir really is, right? When they attacked Orthodox Georgians, right? Orthodox Russians. I'm making quotes because, the Russian church has nothing to do with Orthodox faith, but they attacked Orthodox Georgians. They snatched a bunch of their territory, killed a lot of people. There were Iskander strikes on Tbilisi, and people remember that. But apparently something happened to their memory because they made pro-Russian influencers possible in their government. Ivanishvili, the most pro-Russian oligarch you can imagine in Georgia, that's one of the cases. So unfortunately, propaganda works. Not only propaganda, but money. From what I've heard from my friends in Georgia in 2010, before elections and Ivanishvili and everything else, was that Ivanishvili was an incredibly generous guy. Everybody loved him, even though a big part of his business was in Russia. It was connected to Russia. He was like Russian taxpayer, right? But he was incredibly generous man. He would pay for the village where he came from. He would pay for weddings. He would give different gifts to people there, and people received pensions from him and things like that. So we know that the population of Georgia is not that big, and this is how it became possible, right? Through propaganda, through money, through buying people. It works, and this is what they have now. They have to face a new revolution, probably. Something similar also happened in Ukraine because the pro-Russian government promised a lot of things to Ukrainian population, and unfortunately, there were people who wanted to comply, right? Who wanted to collaborate with this pro-Russian regime, and they didn't realize that you can win something today but lose tomorrow, right? Lose completely, and that's exactly what happened for them. This is how the war actually began, because the war began while Ukrainian dictator Yanukovych was still a president. Crimea was invaded 2 days before he escaped to Russia. So it's so difficult. I really hope that things will work for Georgia. And this time, they seem to have quite a few revolutions, just like Ukrainians, every specific period, which is not bad because, guys, this is how democracy is built. And democracy that we see nowadays in Western countries that are peaceful, and we can see democracy through elections, democracy through fighting corrupted people. This only became possible because Western countries went through massive amount of different revolutions and reforms. That's exactly what we see in Ukraine and Georgia nowadays, and we have big hope in Ukraine and Georgia, of course.
Well, the last question is going to be a relatively short one, I think, because I suspect the answer is quite a short one. And that is, last year, towards the autumn, we heard rumors of something called Maidan 3, which is a Russian disinformation campaign designed to sow division, to spark arguments, and sort of partisan sort of chaos in Ukraine. Do we see any evidence of it? Has it worked at all, or has it been a spectacular failure?
It is in progress because even today I saw a new media that emerged in Ukraine, media that was mainly dedicated to exposing allegedly corrupted Ukrainian people, like authorities, which do exist, of course, like in any other country. But such things raise a lot of questions. On one hand, of course, we should always fight corruption wherever we are. There's nothing worse than corruption, especially during wartime. Especially during wartime, like we have in Ukraine. On the other hand, it can easily be used to sow discord among people, because this is something people really like and hate at the same time. This is something that attracts attention. And again, this is something that may, at least for a while, distract people's attention from the war, which is probably the most important thing nowadays in Ukraine. So I saw a new media that emerged. I'm going to study that, ask my friends who probably know something about it, ask my acquainted journalists. And of course, the campaign that uses things like mobilization in Ukraine and things like that, exposing the servicemen of draft officers that don't behave properly and things like that. Like Russians use that a lot. At the same time, Russians don't usually show their own, draft officers literally snatching people from the streets, like we saw during their mobilization in 2022. So this campaign is in progress, I would say. I cannot say that changes were dramatical, and it was anticipated that the peak of this campaign we will face around the late May, which is today. I don't really see myself anything happening in this regard, but we're keeping our eye on it, and maybe there will be something that Russians will have to, to show, to surprise us with. So we got to stay prepared.
Well, I'm glad that the Ukrainian bubble have you to keep your eye on it and to keep us vigilant and to help the West gain much needed resilience, just like Ukraine has been able to do. Because we're not in the direct firing line, but we're certainly increasingly becoming a focus of Moscow's attention, coercion, and influence. Operator Starsky, it's always a massive pleasure to speak to you. I know the audience will appreciate this. Until the next time, Slava Ukrainian.
Heroyam Slava. On behalf of Ukrainian Bubble, I would also like to thank you for being there, for speaking, for reaching out to different experts and influencers. And I hope to see you offline sometime very soon.